Thanks for joining us. I'm going to give a bio on Brooks. Brooks Fenno grew up in Chestnut Hill. He attended Princeton University, followed by Harvard Business School. At Princeton, he was active in all facets of student life. Played on the varsity tennis team. He was in ROTC, the U.S. Army Student Government. He volunteered for paratroopers and served in the elite 101st Airborne Division, which was also in the movie Saving Private Ryan. He had a very successful career in sales and marketing, his own consulting firm, and he's written 2 business books, and now he's on to a new career path. So please welcome Brooks Fenno.
Well, hello everybody. As you heard, I'm Brooks. And how are you feeling today? Are you feeling upbeat? I'm feeling upbeat because of many things going on in my life. The most important of which is that I got a good bill of health from my doctor. Of course, no bill of health is perfect from your doctor, but they've always got improvements. But apart from that, I enjoy giving presentations like this. I enjoy getting out of my surroundings, and I enjoy particularly the opportunity to share my theories with those of you who are here. And we'll talk about those more in a minute. But this is not about me. It's not about the fact that I'm a octogenarian. And that's not why they selected me. It's not because I'm an author. That's not why they selected me. But maybe it's because I'm a combination of somebody who's over 90 years old who has written a book. And maybe that's why they selected me. Now, turning back to the age side of things, there are a total of 2.5 million people who are over 90 now in this country. 2.5. By the time we reach 2050, there will be 5 million people who are over 90. Now, so that's a fairly sizable group that's growing. And let's turn back to the age category for a second and talk a bit about that. Now, there are a number of ways of determining how old you are. And the latest one that I got said I was going to be 93, but I'm 103, but that's not going to be the case because I'm going to get past that, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. The most common 3 that I've found are the actuarial standards. The actuarial standards are what the insurance company determines how old you're going to be. And in that sense, I got 30 years ago a fixed annuity by the insurance company, which predicted I was going to live to be 84. Well, I've passed that 84 mark, and I'm living on the insurance company funds at the moment. The second way of determining how old you are that I find valid is the WHO, the World Health Organization. They've done a calculation based on an interview which you can get on your email or your internet, which indicates, after you answer a number of different questions, that I'm going to be 97. But that's going to be my ultimate age. But the thing I like about their study is that you can take it as many times as you want, but it'll never say you're dead. It'll always be a year or 2 ahead of you. Now, the third way of looking at how old you are is to determine your situational situation. That means how old you feel you are. How are you doing physically? How are you doing mentally? And how are you getting around? And how are you enjoying life? Now, basically, you have 2 options in terms of when you reach a certain age. When you reach a certain age, you can decide, and that's usually in your 70s or 80s, you can decide whether you want to slide down to the bottom of life and end up going out gracefully, enjoying yourself till the last moment. Or you can try and make the most of your life, and you can live a purposeful life and try and develop this last quarter into a meaningful 4th quarter. And we're going to talk about that throughout the talk today. And the added benefit of having a meaningful life in your fourth quarter is that you're going to live longer, most probably, because you've got a reason to live. Now, this presentation is based on my recently published book, and I'm going to show you from the book the various different options of getting you from where you are now to age 95, which is the theme of the talk. Now here you see a picture, if I can get this book raised up, for the people here who are in their 70s. Now how many people here do we have who are over 90? Paul is one, right? Is there only one? All right, how many people here are over 70? That includes most of the rest of you. All right, now you notice this vessel here, HMS Purpose. Now HMS Purpose is filled with people who are 70 or older, who want to get, who are making concerted effort to get to be over 100 and live a full quarter of their life, full last quarter of their life. Now they're sailing across, at this point in the edge of the book, they're sailing across the Sea of the 80s. The Sea of the 80s starts off quite smoothly. It's sort of an extension of being 70. But when you get halfway through the Sea of the 80s, it starts to turn rough, and you have a difficult time seaworthy-wise getting to the bottom of the end of the Sea of 80s. Now, when you get to the shore of the 90s, there I'm going to be sitting there giving a clam bake. I'm going to be giving soft drinks and hamburgers and so forth. And Paul is going to be with me. We're going to be greeting you to say that you've made it to 90. Now you go from 90, you'll go across the beach and you get to the tree line. And then you go from the tree line, which is age 95, you climb up to the first peak here, which is 100. When you get to 100, you seek the second peak, which is 105, which is the theory of this talk. So that's the life purpose that we have at this point, the fourth quarter of your existence. Now, you're going to see that here, because we're going to talk about this fourth chapter of your life. Now, the fourth chapter is your chapter. It's all about you. And as you see, I've got a number of buttons here. And if your objective is to be alive at 95, now I don't mean just living at 95, I mean enjoying yourself fully and be fully competent to live an enjoyable life when you reach 95. And I have some pins for anybody that wants to subscribe to that to come after the talk is over and get a pin to wear proudly around, indicating that's your goal for life. Now, one step further here, I have a person who helped me design this presentation, artistically design the thing, and her pen name, she wants to go by her pen name, is Jill. And I feel comfortable with Jill rather than use a PowerPoint or a slide projection, because Jill is 99 years old. Now Jill, the last time I saw Jill, with her artistic talents obviously displayed here, the last time I saw Jill, she was going through physical therapy in my gym, and she was learning with her physical therapist the sideways shuffle. Now that's not too bad for somebody that's 99 to learn the sideways shuffle for the first time, and so that's another reason that I feel quite comfortable with this display by somebody who is my age-wise. Now, so that's her, and we're going to talk not about her or me, we're going to talk about you. And here you are as a dot in the life here. Now, as a dot, this is the inner you. And the inner you is the visual side of you that focuses on you per se. And that's what we want to talk about, because as you get older, people don't realize who you really are, what really goes on inside of your mind. But this is what really goes on inside of your mind. And that's your inner self. Now, we're going to diverge from that for a minute and talk about something that you may or may not recall. Donald Duck. How many of you remember? Do you remember Donald Duck? Now, do you know who Donald Duck's sister was? Donald Duck's sister was Della Duck. Della Duck. Della Duck is noted primarily because she's the mother of Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And we're going to weave them into the conversation, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, to make this kind of more fun. Now let's go back to this dot again, and we'll come back to the Huey, Dewey, and Louie in a minute. You'll see in the center of the dot is your mind, what you think of daily when you move around. On the outside is what people think of you, how they realize who you are. And do they really care about you when you reach your age of 70s or 80s? What they care about, particularly if you're living in an assisted living facility or something thereof, they care about two things: your health and your happiness. But that's ephemeral, that's the outside of you. What we want to do is deal with the inside of you. Now, we have here an interesting device. You probably can't guess what this is offhand, but we will show you very quickly how this works, because this is the key to your existing future. And we see this unraveling as we follow it. And it turns into a tripod. And the tripod has hopefully a top to it. And this is the U of you. Now, the tripod to stand has to have all the three legs functional. And so we'll put that right here so you can see it. And you see how it's standing up in the form of a tripod. And what we have here is the three elements, the Huey, Dewey, and Louie, expressed in other terms, the physical, the mental, and the social side. If you have the three sides of you, the physical, the mental, and the social sides, there you have a tripod that stands up on its own. But those are the three things that you have to have to succeed in maintaining and growing your life. We'll take one more try at this to put the head on. Now, the three have to be connected in the form of a that's not going to stand. So anyway, you got the picture. And we'll just put it like this as a tripod. The three of you have to stand up in the form of a connected platform. So this is what I call a platform of life, with the three elements, the physical, the mental, and the social, all joined together, coming off of the center of you, which is your basic core. Now, they have to balance together to form this platform. Now let's start and look at the first part, the physical side, because we're going to briefly touch on each of these. Now the body has two parts to it, the outside and the inside. The outside of you, you lose it or you use it. You use it or you lose it. And that's where the flexibility and the strength and the PT come into play. It's very important that you have, if you have a particular muscle group that you want to accentuate and have last for you, you want to have the PT concentrate on making sure you do that. Now, what is a very good exercise for us all to have? Well, Carrie Lettet, who's a philosopher that you probably have never heard of, Carrie Lettet said that correctly that walking is the oldest physical exercise that has been invented by mankind. And interestingly, centuries later, walking is still the best exercise there is for anybody. Now, the key to walking is balance. If you want to know what the essence of walking is, it's balance. And so what you have, if you picture your 2 feet side by side and you lift 1 step forward to get ahead, you're lifting 1 foot off the ground and you're balancing on the other. So walking is a constant question of balance. And that's why balance is so critical to the ability to stand and walk. Now, there is an iceberg that comes along for people who walk. And the iceberg may be more apparent when you get over into the rougher waters of the 80s. But the iceberg is falling. Now, in the old days, when I was originally heard of this, I heard that Eskimos had 7 different ways of assessing ice, because ice was so important in their lives. And we only had 1. Well, nowadays, the Eskimos probably use a cell phone to determine how the ice is. But going back to the concept of having a lot of different ways of expressing the same thing, there are 3 types of falling that I would like to present to all of you today. The first type of falling, and I'm probably the only person in this area of the country who has perhaps done all 3, but we'll see in a minute. The first type of falling is paid falling. Paid falling. Now you say, how can you get paid to fall? Well, I have been paid to fall. When I was in the paratroopers, I was paid to fall out of a plane once a month. And I got paid hazard duty pay to do that. If I didn't fall out of a plane once a month with my parachute on, no extra hazard duty pay. So I was actually physically paid to fall. The second type of falling is intentional falling. Now, why would you fall intentionally? Well, you have to be pretty crazy to do this, but I did it. Now, here you have bungee jumping. I went all the way to New Zealand to bungee jump. That wasn't the only reason I went to the South Island of New Zealand, but here you have A.J. Hackett, who was the forerunner of bungee jumping. And A.J. Hackett had this bridge going across this gorge, and the gorge went down to 150 feet below. And here you can see a picture of me with a bungee cord attached around my ankles going out of the end of this bridge. And here are the people on both sides watching me get there. Well, you get to the end of the bridge, and the people on the side, they start shouting. They start shouting, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And at 1, you're meant to leap off of this to the applause of the people on the side. Well, when you get out there, and they're 4, 3, 2, 1, the longest second of your life is when you're on the end of that ramp. And you're terrified because you realize the only way you're going to get out is to jump. And the problem with jumping there is that you have to dive. And when you dive, because the bungee cord is tied to your legs, you're going down head first, which is entirely different from parachute jumping. Now, in parachute jumping, you reach a velocity where so you can land and hopefully on a reasonable basis. But here you're trying to slow yourself down as you bungee jump towards the gorge below. And you're putting your hands out in front of you to break your fall. But the more you put your hands out in front of you, the faster you go. So it's kind of a terrifying experience until you reach the bottom of the gorge and you hit the water, hopefully, and bounce back up, and a boat comes along and put you in a little raft and put you to the side, and you've completed your bungee jump. Now, I have a conundrum for all of you to think about. the first person, and see what answer you would come up with this, because I don't know the right answer myself, to see what you would think about this. The first person I interviewed for my talk, for my book, I should say, some 3.5 years ago, was a gentleman up in Maine by the name of Jim Lowenstein. Now, Jim was a very good athlete, very bright person, and he managed to make the play and qualify for and play in the United States Lawn Tennis Association bracket of people over 90 years old. Very few people qualify for that and can play singles at that level of tournament competition. But he did that. He also was a statesman. He had a house in Paris, and he had another house in Washington, D.C. Now, his house in Washington, D.C., his living quarters was on the bottom floor, and for his 95th birthday, his 2 children said to him, "Look, Dad, you're 95, we're going to put a stair lift because your office is on the 3rd floor, you're on the 1st floor. We're going to put a stair lift to convey you up from the bottom floor to the office, back and forth during the day." Well, that was fine, but unfortunately, his doctor found out about this and said, "No way are you going to put in a stairway, because if you put in a stairway, you're going to limit your amount of exercise. And climbing up and down those stairs is probably the best form of exercise you can get at your age on a regular basis." And so Paul listened to them, the doctor, and or Jim, and he decided not to put in a stairway, a stair lift going up there. He would just use the stair climbing as his athletic endeavors on a regular daily basis. And about 2 months after his turning 95, he was coming down those stairs, and he stumbled and fell and hit his head and died. And I don't know what the moral of the story is, who was right, but anyway, that's for you to figure out.
You needed to invest in 2 railings.
Maybe that's the answer. But anyway, he didn't, and that was the end of him. Now, let's turn to the inside of the physical person. The 2 inside factors I'd like to touch on are: the first is the diet. Your diet is very important to your innards physically. And most of us exist on a Mediterranean type of diet. That's the Western approach, some form thereof. Now, the Japanese outlive us as a nation, and they exist on a slightly different approach to what they eat. And Formosa, which is sort of adjacent to Japan, they have an even longer lifestyle, more people who live to be 100. And they live on the Akaya diet, which is a combination of what you eat and how you eat it and what other exercises basically you do. Now, the only thing I can't exist on the Akaya diet, so what I do is just simply take one lesson out of that, and I stop before being full. If you stop eating before you fill up totally, that'll keep your weight down and keep you in better physical shape. Now, there are around the world a number of blue zones. The blue zones are small population areas where people on average live to be over 100 years old. And those are listed in a little bit more detail in my book, but we won't get into that at this point in time. The other factor in the inside of you is your blood. Now, you all know that you have a heart that pumps. Its primary job is to pump your blood throughout your body, into your extremities. Now, 90% of your blood is water. And it's very important, as you all know, that you want to drink a lot of water. And so you should probably try to drink 7 glasses of water a day, which reminds me.
How many glasses of water?
What?
How many glasses of water a day?
They say 7.
7?
7, that's the old rule. 7 glasses of water. I don't think any of you do that, but that was the old goal. If you try to get there, that'll at least keep you hydrated. Now, the heart, the point of the heart is it pumps the blood to your extremities. And that's the important aspect. Now, and the importance of blood appears in your annual physical. Now think of your annual physical for a minute. Think about your annual physical. The first thing that you go in, that happens to you when you go in for your annual physical, is they check your blood by checking your blood pressure. They monitor your blood pressure. That's before they do anything else. The last thing they do as you go out the door at the end of your physical is simply take a sample of your blood for chemical analysis so you can see how important blood is. And I'm going to tell you a story about my experience with the importance of blood reaching your extremities and keeping you there functionally operational. Now, the smallest mountain, the smallest, most difficult mountain in the world, reportedly in the middle of the winter, is Mount Washington. It has the reputation of being the most difficult small mountain in the world from a climate standpoint and a wind standpoint. My story relates to that. When I graduated from when I graduated from high school, I felt when I went to Princeton that I was a seasoned mountaineer because I had climbed mountains throughout the East Coast area. I climbed some of the Appalachian Trail mountains. I climbed around the mountains around Mount Washington and so forth. And I had climbed one mountain in the west. And I thought what I would do is to join the Princeton Mountaineering Club, which I did as a freshman. Now, as a freshman, when I joined the Princeton Mountaineering Club, our major effort during the course of the year, we had 2 semesters, the fall and the spring semester. And we did some rock climbing and learned how to do that. And but the big event was in the middle of between semesters, just this month of the year, which is the coldest month that Mount Washington experiences. And we would go up to the Harvard Hut, and there we would use that as a wood-burning facility to make a summit attempt on Mount Washington in the peak of the winter months. And so the first year we did that, I thought I was pretty well equipped with my coat and boots and so forth. And we got halfway up past up to the base of Lion's Head Mountain. We got to the base of Lion's Head Mountain, and my feet were so cold that I was starting to worry that I was going to get frostbite. And of course, the next thing after frostbite comes gangrene. And when you get gangrene, they have to cut off your legs or your feet or whatever is below you. And I didn't want to have that happen, obviously. So I went to the person we had 2 ropes of 3 people. I went to the person on the first rope and I said, look, I want to turn back. I'm too cold. My legs are too cold. And he said, no, you can't go back by yourself. You'll have to do something different. Why don't we go put you on my rope? So he put me on as the 3rd climber on his rope, and the person who was the 3rd climber on his rope took my spot on the 2nd rope. Well, we managed to get to the Summit House, which is open year-round as a weather forecasting station on the top of Mount Washington, and my legs were still intact. And then I looked back for the 2nd rope behind me, and it never arrived. And we waited and waited. And what happened is that coming exactly up our trail, across the face of the mountain, the 2nd rope took our same trail, and they got caught in the avalanche, which started right behind us. And the avalanche resulted in their all being swept down the mountain. Fortunately, they all survived, but they all had broken bones to show that they had been caught up in the avalanche. Now, my story continues. The 2nd year, I decided to try this again. but again, I was a little bit better equipped. And the second year, I climbed it again. And this year, during the midweek of February, there were three people who climbed Mount Washington, and they all died. There were more than three, but there were 3 deaths while we were up there. And 2 of those are worth recounting, because what happened was the 2 people went up and they formed an igloo. And their igloo was probably a quarter of a mile from where we were camped. Their igloo had a key stone, as you know from those of you who understand igloos, a key block in the center of the igloo. And that fell in and hit the first person on the head and knocked him out. And the second person beside him in his sleeping bag jumped out of his sleeping bag and raced in his long johns and socks and raced down the mountain for help. Well, the next day, when we came out of our cabin to plan our hike up the mountain, we saw these clumps in the ground, in the snow in front of us. And then there'd be some little small steps and then another clump. And of course, by the time you got to the end of the clump, there was a dead body. And what had happened is the person had run down the mountain from the igloo and had stumbled past our hut, stumbled past an emergency phone, neither of which he could see in the dark, and froze to his death. Now, that day was spent looking for the igloo, which by that time had blown over, and it took us the better part of the half day working with Mountain Rescue to find where the igloo was and to find his partner, who had obviously died as well. So that was my second stay. The third stay, my junior year, I climbed again. Now this time I had fully equipment that I could possibly have. I had boots that were so warm that you could perspire in them if you were standing inside. And so I had really thermal boots. I had strong pants. I had a parka that was very strong. And I had all sorts of gloves. I had gloves that attached to the body, and so they wouldn't blow away in the winter. And I had a mask, and I had all sorts of head-warming devices, goggles and hats, and earmuffs and what have you. And so we climbed out, and I was sure that I was going to be able to withstand any part of the winter that faced me. And so I got up to the ridge that breaks the top of the mountain, the ridge at the top of Lion's Head that you follow to the summit, and you face wind that's blowing at you at a total of probably 40, 45 miles an hour. And I was sure I was going to be quite able to handle all of this. But I'd forgotten one part. I'd forgotten one extremity that I had left unprotected because I hadn't thought about it. Now I'm going to leave it to you to figure out what that one extremity might be. It was an extremity that got too cold for me to continue with, and so I had to turn around and go home, and go back to the cabin, and that was the end of that. Now, let's turn to the mental side. We've covered the physical side. Let's turn to the mental side. Now, the mental side has some interesting parts to it. This is what you know you know. This is your current base of knowledge. This is what you know you don't know. And this is what you don't know that you don't know. And how are you going to get around and see what's into the don't know what you don't know? And that's kind of the fourth quarter of this life. And there are 2 ways you're going to do that. You're going to do that by exploring and by travel. And both of those are very important because you need to find your basic of knowledge in the fourth quarter in terms of the cultural knowledge. How much do you know culturally about what goes on out here in the world? How much informationally, how well adapted are you to the information technology that's being thrust upon you by the younger generations today? How much history do you know? It's all sitting out here waiting for you to discover it. How about your artistic abilities? How do you rate yourself artistically? And that's a question as well. Now, I'll use another analogy here. This is a picture of a tortoise. Now, at least the tortoise has two things going for him. The two things that the tortoise has going for him is he stuck his head out of the shell. That's the first thing you got to do if you're going to explore any of this. You got to go and stick your head out the shell. The second is he's got his 4 feet moving. He's got his 4 feet moving, and that, at least he's moving forward. Now, what we've adapted over time, rather than use 4 feet to go forward, we've adapted to using 2 feet to go forward, and we've used the front 2 feet to turn into arms. So we've got more use out of the arms than we would of two front feet. So here, in a sense, is a way that you can explore the unknown by using your 2 back feet and your 2 front feet to get around. Now, that's very important because it gives you a chance to explore this fourth quarter of your life rather than leave it undeveloped. Now, let's turn to my theory of vision for a moment. This is what I want to leave you with. This is the being alive to 105. Now, I majored in psychology at Princeton, and one of the things that I took away from that was that my brain cells would reach the point where they weren't going to get any larger and more numerous, and so I was not going to get any smarter. So that was one of the takeaways I got, which will fit into this talk in a minute. And one of the things that interesting experiences I had is I had to go from my dorm, I had to go to classes, and I had to walk across Nassau Hall, in front of Nassau Hall across the campus. And as I walked across the campus of Nassau Hall, there was I intersected with another gentleman whose name I'll call Albert. Albert was his name. I knew who Albert was. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know I existed. But anyway, I intersected with him and saw him on occasion going across the same campus area. Now, Albert was a visionary. He had a vision and a theory of life that he was at that point trying to prove. And he did prove it. He proved his vision in the form of the theory of relativity. And I have not proven my vision yet, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. But I'm working on it. I don't have the evidence that he has accumulated. His vision turned into modern day physics. And who knows what my vision will turn into, if anything. Now, my theory starts with the fact that at age 40, your memory cells start to decline. And at age 70, these cells start to increasingly rapidly decline. And my vision is you can't arrest that decline, but you can address it in a couple of ways. You can revitalize your connections between the cells, and you can create new cells by coming up with new concepts. For example, what I'm trying to do in the form of bridge, playing bridge, which is an old activity that I did, is resurrect the connections between my memory cells that are lying kind of dormant in terms of their connectivity. And so bridge is doing that. Then I'm learning a new activity, which is a slightly different type of mental activity through chess. And that requires a different type of thought process. Now, let's take a look at the brain cells in a little bit more noteworthy basis. We have a picture of these right here. Now, these are what we call the nerve cells. The proper name for the nerve cells is neurons. That's the medical term for them. And that's the focus of my talk here. And these nerve cells are located, the ones that we're particularly interested in, the background of our memory is the nerve cells that are located in the hippocampus part of our brain, the hippocampus. So you see thousands of these things. Now, actually, what I understand is 100 billion neurons that are tightly compacted, 100 billion of these packed in your brain. They're obviously very tightly compacted, and they work to interconnect with each other to help us function mentally. Now, my theory is that we're going to reinforce the connections that exist already, that need to be revamped, and establish new connections. And my research is underway, and not only my research, but other people's researchers go along on this. Now, my son Arthur, who is with us, is a firefighter. You want to demonstrate the proof of that? You want to face to the back so they can see you? He is a legitimate firefighter with the Wayland Fire Department. Now, he abreast me of one of the studies that is currently in operation, in which there's an analysis, a statistical analysis being conducted between the people who use the dashboard iPads on their cars to get from one point to another, which seems to be a tendency of most people today, to those that use a map. Who lives the longest and who utilizes your brain power the best? So there are many studies that come across our plate that are going to increase in number and hopefully output, that are going to explore the mental side of our lives. Now, the final area here is the social area. And we are all social creatures. And what you perhaps recognize from your thoughts, which I often had as a kid, that what would it be like to be cast aside on an island all by yourself and have nobody to talk to? Could you survive or not? Well, actually, there's a movie made out of that called Castaway, which you may recall, the hero of which is Tom Hanks. And Tom Hanks is cast away on this island as a result of an airplane accident, and is all by himself, to the best of his knowledge. And he pulls aside the materials that are delivered to the, in the form of packages that are washed ashore from his plane wreck. And in them is a basketball. And he takes the basketball and he turns it into a person. And as you remember, the name of the person is Wilson. And he decorates this as Wilson and puts a face on it, and Wilson becomes his social companion. And so that just shows you what it would be like if you didn't have a companion, you maybe make one up. Now, turning it to a different way, we all know that women statistically outlive men. There are a lot of reasons perhaps for that to happen, but one of them certainly is the fact that women are more social. They talk to each other more than men do. And that social interaction, I think, is a factor that leads them to last longer. Now, this gets us into the area of friendships, and this starts with self-motivation. You have to look at how people look at you, particularly when you start to live in a community environment such as a retirement home. how do people see you? How do they react to you? Because you haven't had to do this really before. Now, the early days, there's always been another factor besides the individual, and that is religion, or a form of church and state. So there's been an interaction all the way along up to today, including the church and state and the individual and the interaction between the two of them. And in a more personal basis, it's very important to have a circle of friends. Now, as we get older, unfortunately, the circle of friends diminishes as they die off. And we all experience that as we move on in life. And to experience that, it's important that we try and come up with ways in which we can replenish this group of diminishing friends. And one, of course, the recommended ways is to have friends with younger people who are likely to live longer than perhaps some of the other ones are. Now, where do you start on friendships? Well, the place you start is, I think, the give and take of life. And by that I mean when you buy something at a store, you give them money and you take the goods back. And the same with personalities. You have to give of yourself. The more you give of yourself, maybe the more you get back. But a good goal for all of us is to try and give more than we can get back from others. And by doing that, we at least form the basis of friendship. And as my editor said, you want to try and be positive. Now, what I have here is the conclusion of this talk. And we have it right here. And in conclusion, I'd like to leave you with one thought, which is my sunrise thermometer. And my sunrise thermometer looks like this. When you wake up in the morning, you look at 3 ladders of opportunity. The 3 ladders of opportunity have various different steps of moving forward into the 4th quarter of your life in a meaningful manner. This is your sunrise thermometer. The first one is the social one. Think about what you're going to do spiritually or socially during the day that can improve your relationship with others. You try and take a step up from where you were yesterday and do something in a more meaningful manner. The second ladder here, and you see all these ladder opportunities here that are stretched out from here. Each of these is a separate ladder in your fire truck of life. The second ladder is the mind, and there you can move up the ladder by determining what activities you want to do during the course of the day. And the activity should lead to a meaningful activity and maybe to an ultimate project, such as a hobby. It's very important to try and have some kind of a hobby to which you can address your ends, because as you open the doors to a new hobby, other doors will open and you can move up intellectually in the mind side. And I would like to close by reading a section of my book here, which is the epilogue. And the epilogue of this book, I think, is very well written from the standpoint of creativity. And it says, and listen carefully to this, the basic purpose of life is, perhaps, to procreate. The goal of our species is to survive. The rest is largely up to us. We are living not in the past, but in the moment. We are squeezing, this is important, we are squeezing the last part of our life out of our tube of existence. Shall it be rich with meaning and possibly length? That decision is up to you. Your life story is yet unfinished. And with that, I open it up to any questions that might come from the audience. Anybody have anything they want to ask? Yes.
What do you do in a typical day?
What do I do in the typical day? Well, what I try to do in the typical day is after I get up and do my toilet in the morning, I have breakfast and then come back and do my exercises. Spend the morning doing exercises. I do 3 types of exercises a day. Twice a week, I climb stairs. Twice a week, I work on the treadmill. And twice a week, I do sit stands. But also on every day, I do these new step machine for a half an hour. So the morning is primarily focused on exercise. The afternoon, I work on intellectual things relating to my book. And in the evening, and then at meals, I have lunch with my wife once a week. She comes in from Boston. I live in a different location, and we get together at least once a week for social activities. I also have the people socially that I see in my assisted living facility on a 3-meal-a-day basis. So that covers the social side. And the spiritual side, that is self-reflection, and that's based on what I study spiritually. And the day ends by either my finishing up of my correspondence or watching a movie or something relaxed like that. Any other questions?
Where
Well-
can you purchase your book? I looked on Amazon, it
Well-
wasn't there.
The best way, it should be on Amazon, and the best way of getting it is to try and look up my webpage, which is bfenno.com, which does come on and off. Now, Amazon is also available. It should be available on Amazon as well, but you have to get the full title of the book in there exactly as it's seen here.
We have it in our collection here, which we have it upstairs, as well as the office.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, you can try under my name too. Now, what my webpage will show you here is, give me my background, the other books I've written, including this one, and a blog opportunity to express your thoughts on what it's like to be alive at 95. Any other questions? Yes.
So there have been many books written on this subject matter. It's very much in vogue as everyone begins to live longer and live longer, healthier, and having a more fulfilled life. How would you say your book differentiates from the literature that's out there?
Well, that's a very good question. Probably not in a lot of ways. I think we're all kind of stressing the same thing. We all look at our parents and say, well, our parents lived to be in their 70s. Now, in my case, it's a little bit different, but one of my parents lived to be older. But you're seeing each generation live longer and longer. And I see no problem if you follow some of these demonstrated ways of trying to get there through some of the factors that I listed. You're going to have a better chance of doing it than if you don't do anything at all. So I can't promise you that if you follow my advice, you'll live to be 105, but you will have a better chance. I can attest to the fact that if you have a purpose in life and you live the fourth quarter fully, whether you use my book or one of the others as a guide, but have a meaningful life, you're more likely to achieve it than otherwise might be the case. Yes.
So what's your next project?
What's my next project? Well, I've been asked, rather interestingly, are you all probably familiar with Spalding? Now, Spalding is a rehabilitation center. It differs from assisted living facilities. And I've been asked to give a talk at Spalding on the subject of hope. Hope. And so I'm going to do that. The talk is going to probably come out to the residents of Spalding and others for distribution sometime in April. But that's my next major project. Now, beyond that, I will continue to give these talks around this area as far as I can physically extend myself and transportation-wise can get there, and preach to you staying active in life. And if I can reach 1 or 2 or 3 of you and get you to live a more active life, I feel that I've accomplished a lot. And I'm also going to continue on my bridge, and that's my fallback position, to get back into tournament bridge and also to learn how to play chess. Anything else? Well, thank you very, very much for coming, and I hope you take away from this something meaningful in terms of you're living a longer life, and if you want to attest and have others attest to the fact that you want to get to be 105, please come up and shake my hand, and I'll give you a pin.